Warning. The following video may contain coarse language and mature subject matter that some viewers may find offensive. Viewer discretion is advised.
Salutations and welcome back after, honestly, way too long. Alright, let's try to keep this short, cause God knows I've had enough videos that begin with me apologizing. Although this time I've got a pretty valid reason for being late. That reason, of course, being 2020 was a fucking hellscape of a year. And this year doesn't look like it's much better. Rona's still here. It's just 2020 the squeakquel. Vaccine's pretty good though, you know, this is good though. But let's stop the rambling there, cause I know that's not what you came here for. You came here to watch some obnoxious 20-something deer person talking about nerdy shit. You weirdos. But without further ado, here's the first installment of Memory Lane. So you're probably asking yourself, what is Memory Lane? As the name would imply, this will be a series where I talk about things from my childhood. In particular, the movies, shows, and games I grew up with. The whole point of this series is to look back on said media and see if it still holds up today. Cause there's quite a number of cases where they absolutely haven't, and I was just a dumb fucking kid. Now the reviews in this series will be structured a bit differently from my previous reviews, but obviously I'm still gonna make jokes here and there. I feel like it'd be kinda bland if I didn't. But without further ado, let's talk about motherfucking Star Fox 64, boys! Star Fox 64 is a 3D rail shooter game released in 1997 for the Nintendo 64. That should be pretty obvious from the name alone though. Fucking everything on the N64 had 64 in the title. The game serves as a reboot of Star Fox on the Super Nintendo, back when they depicted the main cast using these weirdly realistic puppets on the box art. It's kind of Uncanny Valley, but it's not terrible. I've definitely seen things that are terrible. Originally developed by both Nintendo and Argonaut Software, the game used the Super FX chip, which allowed the system to render polygonal graphics. It doesn't look good by today's standards, but it was good for '93. Now, initially there were plans for a sequel to Star Fox simply titled Star Fox 2. It was set to be released in 1995, but the game was ultimately cancelled due to the upcoming release of the N64 and later Star Fox 64. Although a few of the concepts introduced in Star Fox 2 would be implemented into Star Fox 64, and from there would be implemented into the rest of the franchise. Concepts originally from Star Fox 2 were all-range mode, the ability to lock onto targets, multiplayer, and Star Wolf. Star Fox 2 also introduced a vehicle called the Walker, but that wouldn't appear in another Star Fox game until Star Fox Zero, which is a fucking shame because that game was kinda garbage, honestly. However, in 2017, about 22 years after the game was supposed to be released, Star Fox 2 did end up getting an official release on the SNES Mini, and then later, in 2019, it became available to subscribers of Nintendo Switch Online. So I guess nothing ever truly dies. Except Star Fox as a franchise. But before things get a little too real, let's get back on track. Since its release, over 4 million copies of the game have been sold. It's often been considered one of the best games on the N64. It's got a remake on the 3DS, and it also had this unbelievably cheesy promo VHS.
Word on the street is you got a new Nintendo 64 game coming out.
Could you be a little more specific? We got a lot of new games coming out.
It's painfully 90s, but it's good pain. It's the best kind of pain. Like cock and ball torture. Still, as a kid, I remember this being one of my favorite games. That, and I probably have this game to blame for making me a furry. But still, as much as I gush over this game, let's see if Star Fox 64 still holds up. Star Fox 64 takes place in the Lylat system, whose native inhabitants are anthropomorphic animal people. Our story begins on Corneria, 4th planet of the Lylat system. A scientist by the name of Andross was employed by the Cornerian army, although he was exiled for performing various dangerous experiments. Cause science bad. Science evil. Leader of the Cornerian army, General Pepper exiled Andross to the derelict planet of Venom, where it was presumed he wouldn't survive. 5 years later, General Pepper received several reports coming from Venom. Pepper sent out the mercenary team Star Fox to investigate. At the time, the team consisted of James McCloud, Pigma Dengar, and Peppy Hare. Upon their arrival on Venom, Pigma betrays the team, allowing Andross to capture both James and Peppy. James is presumed dead upon being captured, but Peppy manages to escape and return home to inform James's son Fox McCloud about his father's death. And believe me, this game does not want you to forget that James McCloud did in fact die.
You'll be seeing your dad soon, Fox. Die just like your father. Too bad Dad's not here to see you fail. Daddy screamed real good before he died.
A few years after the incident, Andross has declared war and sent his army across the Lilat system. In a desperate final attempt, General Pepper once again contacts the Star Fox team to deal with the Venomian threat. The new team is led by Fox McCloud, and is additionally comprised of Falco Lombardi, Peppy Hare, and the bane of my Slippy Toad. Practically fucking synonymous, though. In layman's terms, I guess, like, some fucking monkey head did some evil sciencey shit and, like, now some space animals gotta kick his ass. Does that kinda make sense? The gameplay's relatively straightforward, as it essentially boils down to go through some levels where you shoot a bunch of dudes, then a larger dude, until you reach Venom where you fight the strongest of the dudes. Additionally, if the player meets a certain requirement on some levels, they can take a different route leading to another level where they can continue to murder the shit out of some dudes. You know, it's just dude murdering the game. Most of the levels are formatted like a traditional rail shooter, where the player can move around the screen on a forward-scrolling path. For the most part, you pilot the R-Wing, this cool-looking spaceship that can do a whole bunch of things, like lock onto enemies, shoot bombs, and do that one meme thing. They do, however, spice up the gameplay sometimes with all-range mode levels. We know it's called all-range mode because Fox says so.
All range mode.
These sorts of levels are pretty much the same as the scrolling levels, but now you can move around freely within a large arena. Just murder some dudes, but in a box. You also occasionally fight Starwolf in these sorts of levels. Starwolf is a reoccurring enemy of the Star Fox team, and they've appeared in most of the Star Fox franchise. Hell, Wolf even appeared in Smash Bros. Much like Star Fox, Starwolf is a group of mercenaries generally employed by Andross, consisting of Wolf O'Donnell, Leon Powalski, Pigma Dengar, and Andrew Oikoni? What? Anyway, he's the nephew of Andross, and we know that because he literally shouts, "Uncle Andross!" Now, throughout the game, one thing's gonna be pretty prominent. Your teammates can't fight for shit.
Take care of the guy behind me, Fox.
Fox, get this guy off me.
He's right behind me. I could use some
hit.
help here, Fox.
taking you so
long, Fox.
Okay, so I'm being a fuckhead. They're not entirely useless. Peppy and Slippy are especially helpful during boss battles, since Slippy can show you the boss's shield gauge, and Peppy can tell you what the boss's weakness is. He also just gives you general gameplay advice and sometimes tells you to do a barrel roll. Falco can take you from Corneria to Sector Y, but other than that very specific thing and, I guess, destroying an asteroid that's usually unbreakable, he doesn't really do all that much. Is a character's usefulness just dependent on how fucking insufferable they are? Getting back on track though, the game still makes good use of the R-Wing's capabilities, and with tight responsive controls, it's definitely where the game shines the most. There are 2 other vehicles in the game, but they're just not as fun as the R-Wing. One of those vehicles is the Landmaster, a tank used during the 2 land missions on Macbeth and Titania. The Landmaster does most of the stuff that the R-Wing does, but like on the ground and not nearly as graceful. I mean, tanks aren't inherently graceful given the fact that they're fucking chunkers. But hey, it can hover for a couple seconds. Cool, I guess? It's definitely not the worst, but it's not quite as good as the R-Wing. Then there's the Blue Marine. Is bad. It's the vehicle you use for the only underwater mission on Aquas. Water levels generally aren't fun, so it shouldn't come as a surprise that Aquas is a fucking nightmare. The Blue Marine itself doesn't really help though. Again, it's similar to the R-Wing, except dreadfully slow and shitty. You also can't charge your laser like the R-Wing or the Landmaster, so fuck. You do, however, get infinite torpedoes, which you're gonna need because Aquas is darker than the DC cinematic universe. Also, this boss can eat my entire white-tailed. Really though, even with the general what the fuckery of the N64 controller, the R-Wing still feels best to control. The other vehicles don't completely ruin the game, but they don't feel like they really add much to it either. But it's definitely not the first or the last time Nintendo would use gimmicks. Right, Star Fox Zero? And with that should give you a general idea of how the levels are formatted. Basically, you either shoot a bunch of dudes till you reach the boss, or you shoot a bunch of dudes till the boss reaches you. But the last option's more just reserved for the R-Wing, because I think even the developers agreed that an all-range mode Blue Marine level would just be the fucking worst. But moving on from the general gameplay, let's move straight to Venom. The hit 2018 movie starring Tom Hardy. Please laugh. One thing I should probably mention right off the bat, there's two drastically different Venom levels. Which one you get entirely depends on which level you played prior. Upon completing both, you'll play through a scrolling level that's pretty much like every other scrolling level. Honestly, just do the thing that you do in Star Fox. Just shoot some boys on the screen while going up and down. Although they do spice things up with some stony boy who summons some pillars that fuck your shit up. After destroying him, you enter Andross's base via a long-ass corridor. At the end of the corridor, there he is. There's the big-time sciencey murder monkey himself. Once you've memorized all the R-Wing's maneuvers, defeating Andross in this form should be relatively straightforward. Essentially, you just shoot his eyes, shoot his big metallic primate hands, force him to inhale some bombs and presumably give him heartburn, shoot his eyes again, and then he dies a fiery death. You know, as giant disembodied ape heads tend to do. Except that he doesn't, because it turns out it was some robot decoy he made to deliberately fuck with us. In other words, we've been tricked, we've been backstabbed, and we've been quite possibly bamboozled. So here's the thing. The only way to fight the true final boss and get the true ending is to go to Area 6. It's basically just Nintendo's way of saying, hey, you want the dweeb route? Here, go to Bulls. It'll be funny. So if you actually do manage to get through Area 6, but if you don't, I understand. This fucking boss took me like 10 minutes. Still, if you do, instead of a scrolling level, you'll fight Starwolf. And let me tell you, they aren't fucking around this time, because they then proceeded to metaphorically gangbang me. Every goddamn time. No! Alright, fuck it, it's time to get the cheats out. Pay no attention to the jarring changing quality. Nothing to see here.
Moving right along. Footloose and fancy free.
No way! I don't believe it!
There, Starwolf's fucking dead. Eat my dick! You fly through a slightly different corridor, fight Andross again, and turns out he's like a creepy-ass brain thing with like pink eye and tentacles. Alright, sure thing.
So, Andross, you show your true form.
Honestly, I had no clue what I was supposed to do here. I know you're like supposed to shoot the eyes out first, and I think you're supposed to shoot at his medulla or something? That seems to be his weak point, but this fucker just won't stop teleporting and capturing me. Still, if I wasn't using an invulnerability cheat, I'd definitely be dead by now. But since I'm fucking immortal, this just kinda makes the battle less nerve-wracking and a bit more irritating. But after an overly tedious boss battle, his mind's literally blown and he takes Fox down with him. I mean, doesn't really matter since I'm fucking invincible. However, we do get this.
Don't ever give up, my son.
Father?
Yeah, James McCloud was like alive the whole time. And he didn't think to contact anyone about that. And you can tell it's James McCloud since literally all Johnny Nintendo did was just stick a pair of shades on Fox and boom, new character. This is his dad now. That's like if instead of Luigi, Mario's brother was just him, but with sunglasses, and his name was like Francesco. Yeah, this is canon now. Luigi never existed. As Andross continues to explode, James leads you out through the corridors that brought you there. Fail to keep up with him, and you die. Anyway, he leads you out, you escape, roll credits. So the Great Fox lands back on Corneria, and we all bear witness to the iconic aesthetic that is pre-rendered backgrounds. Although these particular backgrounds are looking pretty crusty compared to the already pretty jagged looking character models. Pepper offers the Star Fox team a chance to join the Cornerian army, but Fox declines the offer, saying,
Oh no, sir. We prefer doing things our own way.
I mean, probably a good idea. Best not to be class traitors.
Great Fox is ready to go.
So they leave and they run next to a sunset and... Wait, guys, hold up. Guys, the Great Fox is leaving. What are you guys doing? It's right behind you. Why are you down there? And there you go. That's the game. It's pretty good. I mean, there is also a multiplayer where you just shoot the shit out of each other, but that's pretty much it. Now, objectively speaking, has this game aged well? Honestly, that kinda depends. If you like longer games with more substance and more lore to them, then this probably isn't for you. However, if you just want a short but satisfying game where you go up and down and shoot enemies on screen, then yeah, go for it. Even with the general weirdness of the N64 controller, the gameplay still manages to be smooth and intuitive. The R-Wing controls nicely, and while the other vehicles aren't amazing, you only really use them for 1 or 2 levels, so I can forgive that. Obviously the graphics aren't great by today's standards, what with all games being in 4K now. But it was pretty good by late 90s standards, and it was graphics like these that would revolutionize 3D games today. The soundtrack might not be as energetic as some of the music in its Super Nintendo precursor, but it's still good in its own way. The soundtrack in Star Fox 64 is a lot more orchestral, with a very heavy space opera vibe to it. Which makes sense given how a lot of the inspiration from Star Fox clearly comes from Star Wars. Oh, and Katina's just one big Independence Day reference. The dialogue's pretty cheesy and consists almost entirely of one-liners, but not dissimilar to the VHS promo for the game. It's good cheese. It's quality cheese. It's quality mozzarella. The story's not too complex, and most of it's just given to you at the beginning of the game. There's not too much to it. It's literally just, some apehead is evil, you gotta go fuck him up, also your dad's dead. Overall, yeah, still a pretty good game. Not graphically great, but gameplay's pretty solid. If you have an N64 or even just an N64 emulator, go get it. It's worth it. Although, if you are using an emulator, don't let Nintendo know. They are notorious for despising emulation, so don't tell Shigeru Miyamoto. He can't know about this. This is between you and me. Wait, what?
私たち任天堂はこの銀行を使って警告を発しました。
エミュレーション。
罪を償うには遅すぎます。
死ぬ。
Well, that just about wraps things up, and let me tell you, it feels good to be talking about something good for once. Seems like all the shit I've talked about beforehand has just been, you know, complete garbage. Although I know for a fact that this positivity's not gonna last for long, because some of the things I grew up with are pretty fucking terrible. But let's talk about those some other time, because I want to savor whatever positivity I can right now. I want to feel good, man, you know, just let me feel good for once. I don't want to talk about shit all the time, because it's shitty. Until next time, this is Synthio. Stay sexy and just wash your hands, please.